afternoon. We're live. Welcome everybody. Hope you're all sitting comfortably. Grab your cups of tea and your sandwiches. We're going to have a really good discussion today at the Business BoardCast. As always, we're going to be short and sweet, but packed full of content for the next 30 minutes. Really lucky today. I've got Steve Lucker with me today, the founder of Slider Creative. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Nikki. How are you?
Yeah, all good, thank you. So we just for anyone that's we've got a lot of regulars, but anyone that is watching for the first time today, whether it's live or later on the recorded version, we will be going through our main topic. So our topic for today is demystifying the brand process. So Steve's going to go through all with give you lots of detail, real examples, go through. But as always, we really welcome your questions. It's so much better when it's nice and interactive. So hopefully you can see the comments box. I see that a few of you have already found that, so that's fantastic. So do say hi and do line up your questions, and I will put them, sprinkle them through to this afternoon. To Steve, and we'll hopefully answer them. So please do ask them as we go along. So Steve, we're talking about the brand process. So just, let's assume that none of us know. I mean, none of us are certainly well, you are, but I'm not, and many of us are not experts in this area. What do you mean by brand?
Thanks, Nikki. I think first and foremost, it's exactly what you were just saying. The difficulty of these kind of setups is knowing the different levels of understanding that people have, to avoid being either patronizing or going into too much detail. So I think from a general point of view, a brand is any way in which a customer experiences your company, your business. I think the mistake that's often made is that it's broken down into pieces. And it used to traditionally, I think 25 years ago when I started, it would have been considered the logo. It's actually quite funny, actually. It's always the worst word to say with the Yorkshire accent is logo. But anyway, it used to be the logo and I suppose the brand deck, and that was it. And that would sit in the marketing manager's sort of desk, and that's as far as it was, as far as it went. I think the understanding of how brands work now has developed and changed hugely. I think most people have an understanding. I think the big giant businesses have changed that. They've created a broader understanding of what brand is, from Apple through to Microsoft through to those kind of guys, Facebook, the power of the brand. But that's a ridiculous scale. I think how it's really helpful to see it is that anything from the way in which a customer, engages with your brand is brand. So traditionally, rather than just being one piece, it could be broken down, say, theoretically into parts. So that might be, yes, the presentation. So that's your website and the way you talk and all those things, the logo itself. But it might also be behavior. That is a huge part of it. And of course, then the brand story. So the brand story is really about getting your story straight, about believing in the things that you are and having something about yourself which is going to help you stand out, and getting that story straight and then repeating. But you often hear these comments, you'll often have with brand experiences. You can have the nicest guest house on the street, but if the service is awful or someone's rude to you, you'll never go back. Actually, another guest house next door might not have quite as nice carpet, but the service is incredible, so everyone gives them a 5-star review. So it's about not trying to just pick one thing to be really good at, to think about the entire sort of holistic experience.
Yeah, so the brand's got to be genuine. It's got to go all through, hasn't it? So for any people out there that's starting out in their business, or they're an SME and they want to take it to the next level, why is the brand really important to them, and how can they? What's the first steps?
Yeah. Okay. So if you look at in your world, if you guys look at Starling Bank, it's a fantastic example, because that was really from the ground up. They built that. A starling, I don't know if you know this, but the bird itself is a very sociable and supportive bird. You know that?
Oh, no. You see, we learn something every day on this broadcast.
Yeah. it's an extremely good example because, I mean, I've always banked with First Direct, and the reason I like First Direct is because they answer the phone. So that's on my list of things.
What do you mean? Do you mean to say you don't have to go through loads of options with First
No
Direct?
options. No options.
Oh my goodness.
And the people who answer the phone are qualified to answer, I think it's just about every question except mortgage stuff or insurance stuff. So they're really well qualified. They answer the phone within 3 rings. They pretty much kept that up even during COVID. So it's a very good model. Starling Bank was built from with very, very clear designs. So even the name of it is what they meant they wanted to be. They wanted to be all about being supportive. They wanted to be progressive. They wanted to be encouraging and inclusive. And that's just before having a very good product as well. So in terms of giving examples, of course, I don't know who's on this broadcast, but we do quite a lot. 10 years ago, I rebranded Hilton globally, and that was to take them to IPO. They were previously 2 big businesses. There was Hilton International, and then there was Hilton Worldwide. One was American, the rest of the world was separate. And Blackstone Group went in and bought them, and then realized it was very disparate. So there was presentation was very different in Japan to Chicago. Nothing matched. The tone of voice was wild, and it seemed like there were a bunch of 540 hotels operating like islands. Was the example that we gave them. So they all had their own tone. They all had their own personality. So really, something as big as that was about putting it back together and then simplifying it and actually presenting them back in the way that they could actually deliver on, rather than having this sort of wild, disparate presentation. In terms of small business, it's not actually that different. But the mistake that's made is to sort of rush to market or to work on parts in pieces rather than look at it holistically. So that's why I used the reference before. Typically what we'll do with a smaller business, we did one recently, which is they've created this really interesting product, which was particularly pertinent during lockdown, where they created these pods, and the pods are little individual offices that are housed in, often it looked like they were going to do a deal with a lot of the high street gambling places, which with what's gone on recently, everything's online now with gambling. So a lot of these places were in 5-year contracts and they were empty. So they were buying up a few of these. They were going to put pods in them. These pods are super ventilated, broad, incredible Wi-Fi, silent, and all these things. So great for individuals to go and get out of their house and go do some work. So we're working with someone like that. We still had to tell the story. So the story being, what is it that you really value? What is really important about your product? What's really special about what you do? Even if you don't think, we're a bit like other people, you think, what's really that special? You have to have values around your business. So typically what we'll do is we'll have something that we start off with, which is the purpose. And the purpose is your purpose of your business. Why do I get up and go to work in the morning? And people in brand, sometimes it's questionable, but there's lots of people in brand, lots of different levels. There are quite a few charlatans. There's some excellent people. But the purpose is really the holy grail. It's what defines us as a business. We exist to do this, this, and this. And we try to do it to the best of our possible ability. Secondly, to support that are values. And really, in small businesses, they're quite easy to dig out, because in small businesses, they tend to be an extension of the founding members. So if somebody set up a business and it's a florist, this particular florist really, really believes in wildflowers, right? So we know where we stand. So we can start building values around wildness and about sort of more of an organic approach or whatever it might be. But those become sort of almost pillars for the business. So the purpose is supported by the values. And then you tend to have, and I hope I'm not going too far here, but then you tend to go,
absolutely, it's all good.
Then you tend to go into brand expression. Brand expression is really, there's loads of different ways of saying this. And if you've ever Googled, it's a bit like Googling your health. It's terrifying. Don't do it. If you've ever Googled how to do brand, it's a bit the same. You'll end up with all these different charts and diagrams and different ways. Essentially, they all are different formulas for finding out what is unique about your business, having certain things that you really, really believe in, and then repeating that behavior over and over and reflecting it in the way you look and sound and behave, like I've said, and doing it over and over, because the sign of a successful brand.
Oh my goodness, what's going on there?
It's an ambulance. It's the mean streets of Berkhamsted. So
oh goodness.
Was that really loud for you? Sorry.
That's all right. It's okay.
I'll ask them not to pass here
I
again.
just didn't know how long it was going to go for, but actually it just went. It just came and went. I should have just been more professional and just carried on. We're real. We're real and live.
So it's the reason that we called this demystifying is because it is really a lot of it is about common sense. Yes, there's process and yes, there's formula, but like I've said earlier in the call, the tendency used to be to create a document. The marketing people have that, and then everyone else thinks they're excluded from it.
But or they just put it in a drawer. They forget to use it all.
We built when I first started my career. I was based in New York for 5 years. It was at the advent of all this kind of thing, and people used to want to create these great big brand. They used to call them brand Bibles, like 250-page documents telling everybody about their brand, which they'd then sort of go back to their office, stick in the drawer, and never show anyone. It's not good enough for just the marketing department to understand the brand. And they say the sign of a good brand is that the person on the front desk or the delivery person or whoever it might be knows and understands the principles of the brand and can actually do a decent job of articulating it.
Well, that goes nicely into a question that we've just had in. So Bethan asked, so you've put together that brand, and what are the effective ways of communicating your brand?
Thanks, Bethan. I think this also comes back down to what kind of business you are, because I think the mistake that people made 5 or 6, 7 years ago was everybody suddenly jumped onto social media. Some people made a real mess of that. There are certain brands which suit that, and there are other brands which it wouldn't make any sense for whatsoever. So it's about knowing who your audience are, I suppose. So in terms of effective ways of communicating your brand, it's harder when you're small, of course, because we haven't got the advertising money. We can't just go to market and say, we're going to spend sort of millions of pounds on some campaigns. But what social media has allowed is to sort of give us all the megaphone as long as we do it right. And I think what's really important in terms of communicating your brand is being thoughtful always. So it's a little bit like we tell our kids with social media. Don't type something now that you'll regret later. And it's a bit like that with brands generally, is knowing what you're about and believing in that. There's great value in that. And you can actually now get to a lot of people in quite simple ways. But you also see, much bigger brands making mistakes. We had one relatively recently, I won't name the brand, but they associated themselves in a campaign with an influencer. And that influencer then went on and said lots of quite politically charged things. The entire campaign got pulled. So even big brands are making these mistakes all the time. I keep saying the same thing over and over again, but it's a little bit like a confident person at a party. You feel quite comfortable talking to them. They don't have to be loud. They don't have to be obnoxious and loud to be confident. They have a calmness to them. It's because they've got their act together. And so that makes the conversation go a lot easier. And it's a bit like that with brand. It's like making your customers feel confident, making them feel trusting, making the process have less friction. These are all parts of it. Customer service is a big part of brand. So is, obviously the visual manifestation, the brand identity, all the system, all that kind of stuff. Yes, of course it is. But there are lots of parts of it which you can control in a different way.
So you mentioned there a bit about, when the influencer got involved and it all went a bit pear-shaped. What other things do people get wrong when it comes to working on their brands and branding?
I think what we've generally been talking about is that it is about finding the purpose of the business and then putting it all down on paper and then behaving that over and over again. What another brand that we worked on, people will have, particularly bigger businesses, they will start picking values for the business that are nice to have rather than things that they can actually deliver. So they'll keep saying, we're the most generous business. And then you'll say to them, how? Because you can't say you're generous. Somebody has to tell you you're generous.
No, right? That's when you have to say 5% of your profits goes to whatever charity and actually do it.
Right. Yeah. It might be that, when we were working on Hilton 10 years ago, they had some great people working there. But they were saying things like they wanted to be generous. They want to be generous, but then they'll then it has to be, free water in the bedrooms and free Wi-Fi. It has to convert into behavioural stuff, or depending on what it is, your product or however it is, has to, maybe a charity thing, like you say. That's a good example. But it's words. It's not just words on a page. It's how those words then influence everything that you do as a business. So if you've decided this could go wrong, but if you've decided that you are a generous, authentic, and happy company, then how do you display generous, authentic, and happy on a day-to-day basis? There's a little company that I used to get my specs from, and I always talk about them because I think they're a lovely little business called Blue Bloom, and they everything from start to finish, the process is lovely. I've no skin in the game, by the way. I'm not getting credit.
Getting commission.
No. Every little step, when you order your glasses, the tone of voice that they send over. We've just seen you've made an order. We just want to double check we've got the order right. The delivery time is on time. They're polite. The packaging is lovely, and it's not overpriced. So actually, it's a combination of all those things, and this is why I keep banging on about this idea about being holistic. It's all the things connecting. Saying what you say is fine, but then it's walk the walk, talk the talk. It really is.
Absolutely. So, that's a really good example of a great brand. So we said Blue. What was it called?
They're called. I feel like I'm going to sort of slide out.
Let's advertise them.
Do some sort of like placement. They're called Blue Bloom.
Blue Bloom.
I've been really impressed by them. They're hard to say, but the whole thing has been really easy for me.
Yeah.
And I'd rather give examples of good brands that I've actually experienced as a person, consumer, rather than somebody who sits in my position as a creative director, because it's less skewed. The reality is, you mentioned about good brands. Starling brand is won Bank of the Year 3 years in a row? It's
been winning loads of things. It's just getting everywhere. It's just growing so quickly. Everyone knows about. Well, everyone in business generally knows about them now.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, so of those great brands, of the brands that have been developed out there, and which one are you most jealous of that you wish as a creative you were the one that came up with it? Or even one that you did come up with if you wanted?
Well, I don't know if I really think like that, to be honest with you. Back earlier in my career, when you work in a smaller business, you don't necessarily always get access to the super, super big brands.
Yeah.
There are so many brands out there that I just think seem really lovely, and they've actually got really good ethics. I think those are the ones that these days are starting to do particularly well. This wasn't even the case 10 years ago. Now, brands are now being judged on who they associate with and their charitable work, or certainly their impact on the world, right, on the planet. These things are now all being factored in, and that's why it's a little bit of an exercise in. We've got to, if we're going to say these things, we really have to back them up. We're working on a brand at the moment. It's a lovely company, and it's a lovely company because she really means it. It's a small business, and she does beautiful shoes, sort of couture shoes. Celebrities have worn them in the past, but they're all vegan, and she's
fantastic.
It's the kind of meeting that you go to where you really think about what shoes to wear before you go in, because you don't want to sort of let yourself down. But she's fantastic. She really means it. She's not preachy, and she's just trying. She moved to the UK in 2005, and she couldn't find vegan shoes, so she filled a gap in the market by doing it herself. But what I like about it is what she says is what she does.
You didn't get fashionable vegan shoes. You could always in Brighton get vegan shoes, but they were like really clumpy.
Yeah, they were more cloggy.
Sorry, as somebody that often buys vegan shoes, I know that.
Well, she's great. So we're helping her at the moment get the story straight, and I think also there's another thing that is worth mentioning about the brand thing, and I've been doing this now for 25 years, and sometimes I forget what I've already said, if you know what I mean. But there is also a huge efficiency with brand. We were talking about this earlier, and it affects the finances of the business. So one of the bigger challenges that we had, and it's quite interesting for the context of this call, I'd imagine, but the biggest challenge to us used to be in the States with CFOs. Why are we spending money on this? Especially in medium-sized businesses, because it seems like quite a big investment. I think that's changed. I think people realise that it is the differentiator now. Often, of course, nothing beats the power of a good product, but you still have to have a great way to support that and to communicate that. But I think the thing is that's been really effective over the years is in talking to those people in those positions is that actually the problem with not having a good brand identity system, that is knowing exactly what you're about, knowing how that looks, how that sounds, and how to do it, the problem with that is you're asking your team to reinvent the wheel every time. And what that does is actually creates great inefficiencies. And it means that you are starting with grey area. If you already know what it looks like, sounds like, then it streamlines the business. Actually, particularly in the bigger businesses, it can save them millions and millions and millions because you're not asking for new things every time. And actually, another point on that is the temptation to renew all the time is a mistake because we live with our brands every day, so we get bored of them. So 6 months down the line, we think, I don't know if I want to be orange anymore. I'd rather be, I think we're blue. The problem with that is that your customer might have only experienced you 2 or 3 times in that period. You've seen it every day. So you're not building any equity. So consistency, people talk about Apple Mac, which drives me mad, because actually what they've done is just being consistent. They've got a great product, but the packaging has been slick, product on white for 10, 15, 20 years. The fonts are everything's just consistent and they've stuck to it. So
it's like Heinz baked beans. It looks like you think that it's the same, but they keep on just slightly changing it. You see it over the years, don't you? I've seen a lot of those sort of things, pictures of that. So that really weird. You think, why did they bother? Why did they bother? It was all right in first place.
I'm not sure I would compare Heinz baked beans with Mac, but I know what you mean.
No. Yeah. But equally a large company that have got a lot of branding budget.
Yeah. There can be these little tweaks can be really important though because they seem silly sometimes, but there are really good examples of brand exercises where there's been quite a big commotion about it. The 2012 Olympics. I know the chaps who.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yes.
So I know the company that did that. I don't know them personally, the people who did it, but I was always quite fond of that. I always thought it was really unusual and eye-catching and different, not just sticking in a formula and doing some nice graphics. It had something about it. And I know it was contentious because it wasn't everyone's taste. But if everyone cast their mind back now to the last 10 Olympics, you'd remember that one.
Yeah, and everyone talked about it, so that actually communicated it. That's a good question, actually, for anyone that's watching for live at the moment. What are your favourite brands, or what brands do you think are absolutely appalling? It'd be interesting to hear. Then it'd be good to hear Steve's comment on any that come through. But just thinking back to you were saying about making sure they're authentic. I think a good classic example of where so a business that was seen as very ethical, the Co-op Bank, that had, the FSB had all their members banking with it. It had great reputation, but one person in its team ruined that reputation. I mean, they're still there, obviously, but that really dented their brand, didn't it? Terrible. Oh, good one. Right. So what do you think of Victoria's saying innocent smoothies? That's a fairly new one as well, but very successful.
They're very successful. Okay, I'm going to answer personally rather than necessarily in professional capacity, but I think that they are called innocent smoothies. I'm not entirely sure how innocent they are. I think one thing that always disappoints me is the plastic.
It's true. Yeah.
You call it innocent, go for it. Make it glass, make it recyclable, or make it the Ben Shaw's thing back in the day where you could return the bottle and get 10p.
Oh, the Schweppes lemonade. Was it Schweppes lemonade? What? Corona lemonade. That was it.
They're actually just bringing that back. So that
it's good
an idea that was perfect 30 years ago that everyone dropped for plastics is now coming back. I think in terms of innocent smoothies, was it Coca-Cola bought them?
Yeah, I think so. It was a big outfit. So you do wonder now, are those what they set it up and they're their brand and their mission and their objectives, is that still relevant when they've been taken over by a huge business?
So I think that's the point. Is I think when the risk that you've got if you're going to sell to a company like Coca-Cola is then you get involved in the politics of that owning business. There's no doubt if you look at the component parts of an instant smoothie, they're pretty delicious and they've definitely got fruit in them. I don't know enough. So there are parts of it which are working really well. It's obviously sells very well, and I don't know enough about it at the moment, but there are other parts which feel like they don't quite tie into the promise itself. It's quite playful. I think they've done quite a lot of playful work over the years, but it's harder for the marketers to repeatedly stick to a story if that story can't be reinforced in actual fact. So that would be my instinctive response to that. But without research,
Yeah, Coca-Cola. Yeah, so originally they bought 20% of the business, and now they own the whole lot. So yeah, I do buy a lot of instant smoothies because my son is the one smoothie type that he actually likes, the one that's got beetroot in. But each time I give it to him, it's like those little things. It's such a lot of waste of packaging. Absolutely. Oh, here's another one. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I mean, the thing is, Coca-Cola is obviously an incredible brand, and the people who work there are very, very clever, but the product is not good for you. So, yeah. It's not great, and but it's quite delicious, and whatever, people can make that choice themselves. But then if you associate that with innocent smoothies, there is a little bit of a culture clash going on.
Yes, big
on
an
obvious level. So that is a challenge that they're gonna have.
So another one, it's continuing the banking theme from earlier. So is she's suggesting about Monzo Bank?
Yeah, well, it'd be interesting to know what she thought of them. All I ever hear is what I will say is if you bank with Monzo Bank, you tell everybody you bank with Monzo Bank, right?
Yeah, because I don't know that many people that do, so they're obviously not showing it to me.
It's one of those things where it's a little bit like being from Yorkshire. If you're from Yorkshire, you'll tell everyone you're from Yorkshire. People are always opening the wallet and pulling out the bright orange card. I think it's a very, very, very efficient. From what I understand, it's very easy to use, and we've talked about this in brands as well. Brands being quite frictionless, and the other brands being really difficult to use. And actually, another good thing about brand is that it's forcing companies to make things easier for individuals, because if not, they get found out. People will turn away. There'll be bad press. There'll be bad social media. This is a good thing because actually 10, 15 years ago, customer service was at an all-time low. I mean, I moved back from the States to the UK and I couldn't get a bank account. There was, you try and ring BT. You try and ring BT to get a phone line. You'd be on hold for, it was terrible. You'd be on hold for 2 or 3 hours for them to hang up on you. And people used to, almost tolerate that. But I think that's what brands are making people change, is that you will have options. And if you're not going to get it right, I'll go to someone else. So I think someone like Monzo, what they've done is they've made it easy for people. They've made it easy and efficient. And I didn't get the name of the person who mentioned that, but Zora might say something different. But my understanding is people who bank with them love them. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're nearly coming to the end. So we've got a great question to end with from Nigel, one of our regulars. So aside from visual branding, what are the top tips to communicate company purpose and value to back up branding and make it work? Thanks, Nigel.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and some of it is intangible, Nigel. So it tends to be that the purpose and the values of the business are there to help steer in terms of decision making. That could be anything from procurement, like why are we buying that chair? If we're saying that we're really ethical, we should be buying that chair. It's fair trade. So that's a really, really simplistic, basic example of it. But it's about having the values of the business running through the sort of the arteries of the business and the brand generally. So yes, okay, he's absolutely right. The visual identity is really important. Tone of voice is so important. Tone of voice probably more than visual these days, arguably. The way that we talk, it used to be that you'd have 10 people in a company writing for a company, all with slightly different tones and styles. It just can't do that anymore. You've got to have the guidance from the guidelines needs to drive the way in which you sound, whether that is very familiar or very formal or very authoritative or whatever it is, that's fine, but it has to be consistent. So tone of voice, visual positioning, behavior, like I said, so the way your staff behave, there should always be some sort of training extension of the brand itself. So the values of the business need to be understood by everybody. And they need to understand how that might then manifest in the way that you say hello. It's not about creating robots. It's about giving people freedom to express themselves within guidelines. So I don't know if you've watched White Lotus, the new.
Oh, yes. God, we've been watching all the same things recently.
Yeah.
Yes, watched the whole of that. Yeah,
absolutely. It's not quite like him on the front desk. So it's not like him, the general manager. So it's about giving people the freedom to be themselves, and authenticity is really important. But there are so many different ways in which people, it depends on your business. So if you're a service brand, it's easier because as a service brand, you can really build in those things within the experience, little comments here and there, or little extras that you can give to people that can make them feel a bit special and build trust and friendship and all those sort of things. But really, it is a combination of everything. And I know I've sort of repeated myself a little bit, but actually a really good way of putting this is we deal with so many businesses that say to us, we want to fix our brand, and they'll send us over 10 documents. One will be a tone of voice document, one will be a photography guidelines document, one will be a visual identity and graphic guidelines document, one will be the brand architecture, so the positioning statements, that's what brand architecture is. And you'll say, well, why are they all in different documents? You could do them in chapters. How are you breaking those into almost silos? That doesn't make any sense. So it's about putting them all together and making sure they all join up and then repeating. I said earlier, the sign of a really good brand is actually a customer telling you what your brand is and getting it pretty close without actually having ever seen the manifesto of the business.
Super. Well, thank you so much, Steve. We've lots of stuff there. So anyone that hasn't really thought about their brand or wants to have like a redirection, it's good. Lots of things to have a think about for this afternoon. So Steve, everyone can contact you on LinkedIn. I think I put a link to you directly. So if you want to have another chat with Steve later on, just do contact him. I'm sure he'll welcome the chat. But thank you so much for your time today. It was great to speak to you.
It's a pleasure. Hopefully it was useful. Sometimes you feel like you're waffling on, you don't know who's there. So hopefully it's valuable.
Yeah, loads of good content in there. Excellent. So thank you very much, everybody. So next week, same time, same place, 12:30 next Friday. And we are talking tax next week, or we're going back to our roots. And we've got the lovely Guy Smith, our new tax director, joining me. And he'll be telling you all the latest things happening in tax and what he's going to be focusing upon for our clients. So bye for now. Thank you very much, Steve. And have a lovely weekend, everyone. Cheerio.